Hi folks, and so the world continues to get more and more pear-shaped as the days go by. I was going to do another walk and talk for you today, but it's been a little bit cold and windy, so I'm doing another indoor one. That's just the way it goes. But wow folks, I mean, it's crazy everything that's happening, and it's just continuing. You know, while people are distracted with the contrived riots and contrived race war that seems to be unfolding across the United States, which has all been completely contrived, of course, based on based on the murder of George Floyd, who it turns out wasn't such a nice person after all. An interesting thing, folks, too, I don't know if people noticed that, I mean, with the cop kneeling on George Floyd's neck the way he was, I keep calling him Joyd for some reason. But anyway, the way the cop was kneeling on George Floyd's neck, interesting to note that the Minnesota police, I believe, trained in Israel the year before that event happened. And kneeling on people's necks is a standard Israeli practice. This is where the United States cops have learnt most of the brutality that you're seeing against the people in the United States. They learn it all in Israel. Israeli Defense Force is a really, really brutal, child-abusing army, and that's where they're learning their tactics from. But it's not just against black people. I guess they've kind of, they've keyed up all the whole race stuff, and they've got two sides, fighting against each other. They've got Black Lives Matter involved, and they've got Antifa involved. So I guess they just hurt a white man just to even it up.
Hold the line! Hold the line! He's cleaning out his ear! Grab these two guys right now. Get him medic! Grab these two guys right now. What the f*** you walking up on me? I'm on the ground! Grab him! Y'all don't want that shit!
Back up! Back up! Get off the steps. Let's go. Get back. Get back.
Better get an ambulance for him.
We have EMT on.
And I'm sure you've seen that video before. It went pretty viral pretty quickly. And this is being done deliberately like this, and the films, I believe, would be allowed to get out there because they want people to really rise up against the police force. They want some form of civil war in the United States. There's a rebellion stewing, but it's all for the wrong reasons, and it's being managed all the wrong way. And it's certainly being managed to happen. All of the rioters that are coming into towns, in various towns, are all being bussed in there. Not so in one particular town in Washington, who are concerned that people from Spokane might come there and start rioting. And they're all wandering around town fully strapped up with guns all over them, saying, don't come here and start any riots because we'll protect our town.
I'm telling you, if you guys are thinking about coming to Coeur d'Alene to riot, loot, you better fucking think again. Because we ain't having it over here. What's up, dude? I'm telling you, we ain't having it. You ain't gonna come in our fucking town and fuck our businesses up. Like, we're right here downtown. Everybody's out, strapped. I guess there's this big rumor that people from Spokane are gonna come out here and act up and try to riot. But that shit ain't gonna happen. Watch, I'll just walk around and I'll show you how serious these guys are. You got a lot of people out here strapped up, ready to protect this community. Again, if you're in Spokane, if you have any thoughts of coming out here, think you're gonna loot and riot, you better fucking think again. Think again. Because these motherfuckers ain't playing right here. These guys they are not playing. Everybody's ready to defend and protect this town to the fullest by any means. Yeah, sweet. Making friends.
And that's a good thing to see people doing that, but it's kind of a little unnerving to see people having to do that. But a lot of the reason they're doing it, folks, is because they want people to view the police as the enemy. And it's interesting how they're playing that. I mean, the police have been used to repress the people, and they've been basically taught not to care about the people. And now many of the police are about to be thrown under the boot as well. We always told them that it was going to come for them as well. I always said, you take your uniforms off and you're standing with us. And many of them are about to be relieved of their uniforms, it would seem. There's talk to disband the Minnesota police force because no one trusts them anymore after the murder of George Floyd, which is understandable. But what will happen if they disband the Minnesota police force? What, are they going to hire a new police force of trustworthy people? Really? Is that what they're going to do? Are they really going to be trustworthy? Who's going to be applying for these jobs? What they will effectively do with this is they will create a vacuum where they will need to bring in the military, and you'll have martial law. That might be for a little while Trump's cleaning things up and taking care of things the way he said he was going to. And then you will end up with a privatized police force, which will be so easily corruptible it will not be funny. It will be a whole new level of totalitarian control if that's allowed to happen. Because it isn't just happening in Minnesota, there's also talk of removing funding from the LA police force as well. They're going to remove $100 million worth of funding from the police budget. Interesting stuff, folks. While this is happening, we're seeing things like Amazon burning down in Redlands.
Scott Reif and Air 7 HD finally has gotten there right now. Look at that fire. Now, from this vantage point, it is just massive, just an active fire right now. 3-alarm at a warehouse. We're going to go to Scott Reif, Air 7 HD. Hey, Scott.
Yeah, massive is the word for it in this warehouse, and everything in it will be lost. It is completely encompassed this entire Amazon warehouse. We think it's an Amazon warehouse because we see the trucks marked with Amazon.
On YouTube, claimed that it was looters burning down the Amazon warehouse in Redland, but the report came out that it was actually a fire that started inside. It would be really serious if it was looters burning this sort of stuff down, folks, because as much as we dislike Amazon, they do have things that people need, and all of the other infrastructure is breaking down. And that's another reason for these riots, folks. One of the reasons they're pushing this is because it's breaking down all the infrastructure. All of these cities where these riots have broken out, even in LA, it's going to be very difficult to get food in LA soon. It's going to be very difficult. Trucks aren't going to be flowing in there. Infrastructure is going to be broken down, shops destroyed and smashed, all done by design to create the type of chaos that they want to usher in. This is what is going to lead to the big cull, folks, that's coming. Here in Australia, things are equally crazy. We have Australia's National Antimicrobial Resistance Strategy 2020 was released in March. You can go and read through there, folks. That's a nice fascist document for you to see what their resistance, their antimicrobial resistance strategy is. And what this is about, folks, really is social isolation. That's their antimicrobial resistance strategy. I mean, people call it social distancing. It's not social distancing. It's physical and social isolation. It's an end to all privacy. There's reports that have been leaked to me, and they're saying this is going to go on for a while, folks. So just show you this before I get to that. They're talking about this as well. I won't even play you the video. I'll put the link below if you want to watch it. It's a mainstream news report, but this is the way they're playing it. Government's sobering warning as Australia enters recession after coronavirus pandemic. The thing is, folks, you've got to put it in perspective. We're not entering a recession after the coronavirus pandemic because there was no pandemic. We are entering into a recession due to the government's response, their deliberate response, their planned response to a non-existent pandemic that they sold to the people through the mainstream media. It's a complete lie. And again, if you go to the World Economic Forum and look in their website, look at the COVID response plan, you'll find that they have had this plan in the making for around about 50 years. So it's important for people to look at this stuff, folks, and see how see how things are really being played here. Let me just turn this off so I stop getting messages and disturbing things. That'll be better. But they're saying also that Australian scientists hope to mass produce COVID-19 vaccine by the end of 2021. Now think about what the message is there, folks. The end of 2021. What they're saying is they're going to keep this social distancing in place, this social isolation in place, until at least the end of 2021. You know, they've got to do this and put a plan that is far enough away to get people used to this social isolation, but close enough for them to be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But still far enough away that they get used to it, because the plan is for it to never go away. You know, what they're putting in place here in Australia is pretty horrendous, folks. I've had some stuff sent to me. There's one document that was sent to me. I'll see if I can find it here. It's being sent out to restaurants in the Lismore area in New South Wales, Australia. The food and safety COVID requirements. I'll just read you a couple of little bits of it here that are quite interesting. It's on behalf of the council, I'd like to update you on changes to the public health COVID-19 restrictions on gathering and movements, Order 2020. From June 1st, 2020, they're saying, you know, people can go dining again. Yes, you can have up to 50 customers you can have, but you've got to have subject to one person per 4 square metre rule and with strict social distancing guidelines in place. This is what they're doing, folks. If you own a business, a restaurant business, you have to map out your floor. What you've got to do, calculate how many people can fit into the premises based on one person per 4 square metres, display this number on your front door, arrange your dining tables to allow 1.5 metres distance between seated customers. There is no exception to this rule, i.e. if they are from the same household. So children have to be 1.5 metres away from their parents. Husband and wife have to be 1.5 metres away from each other in the restaurant. They've got to map out their floors so that there's one person per 4 square metres. And you've got to put a number on your door. Oh yes, we can have 8 people in this restaurant, or we can have 16 people in this restaurant, because you've got to map it all out and put it on your floor. To maintain physical distancing, this area is limited to this many people. And again, it isn't physical distancing, it's social isolation and mass surveillance. See, in this type of a situation, it's impossible for anyone to have any private conversations. You can't sit at a table and talk amongst yourselves. You're 1.5 metres apart. You've got to speak quite loudly to hear everybody at the table. If you're sitting having dinner with 4 people, or 4 out to dinner, or 6 out to dinner, you're all 1.5 metres apart, you've got to talk quite loudly. So there's no more private conversations. All about mass surveillance and about social isolation. It says here, please note that part of the plan requires the recording of a person's name and phone number or email. This is a confidential record and must not be recorded in an open book, sheet, which the public may have access to. So the public isn't allowed to know they're doing this and they can't see it. You see, in this sort of a situation, people may use restaurants for a little while because it's kind of novel to be going back out again, but after a while they won't use the restaurants at all. And so you'll see a complete destruction of any of these small businesses. People won't be able to go to restaurants. They'll have to be buying their food from Amazon or Walmart or whatever the main shopping centre, conglomerates are, because all the small businesses will end up dying as well. So what you see with this, folks, this social isolation and this destruction of small business and the destruction and virtually outlawing of all social interaction. The government's response to a pandemic which has killed 101 Australians is to completely and utterly destroy the fabric of society. That's what they're doing, folks, breaking down society completely and removing everybody of any social interaction. Sound like a good plan? And it says here, a customer's refusal to give this information is not acceptable if they wish to sit down and dine at any of your tables. A person placing a takeaway order is not required to provide their details, but may not use the dining seating including outdoor dining. If you're handing out pens for clients, please ensure they are sanitized after the clients use them. This record must be kept for a minimum of 28 days and available. This is basically turning the entire world into a prison camp, ladies and gentlemen. And that's what they're doing in Australia. It says down here, you can go to this website here to see where it is. For more details, log into the COVID-19 Awareness for Food Service. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me, Cameron Smith, and here is his address and here's his phone number. I would suggest people do contact Cameron Smith and say, yes, I do have some questions, Cameron. My first question is, seeing as how this so-called pandemic, this so-called coronavirus, was declassified by the UK Health Department back in March and decategorised to be no longer a disease of high concern. Since we've had only 101 people in this country allegedly die of coronavirus, and since the suicide rate has been 2 or 3 times that due to the lockdown, since the Australian Health Department themselves have said that this virus is 162 times less deadly than the seasonal flu, and seeing how we've had reports from school children how they are already suffering anxiety and stress due to the social isolation you're imposing, my question is, can you show cause why you should not be held in deliberate abuse of office, why you should not be held for treason, and why we should not take immediate steps to have your council dissolved and you held liable for your actions for reckless endangerment of the public health? I mean, the mere fact that you've been spreading these lies of this terrible pandemic, which is 162 times less deadly than the seasonal flu, the mere fact that you've got politicians in this country mandating the wearing of face masks, which, if you ask any doctor, actually endangers the public health. It increases the viral load on your body. It makes you sick. What you are doing is psychological and physical damage to the people of Australia. This is reckless endangerment of the public health. So can you show any reason whatsoever that we should not rally the people and take whatever steps are necessary to have you and your council dismissed and all of you held accountable for your actions and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law? And this is what people should be doing and ringing up and saying to these people. If you're a business owner or a restaurant owner in Lismore, this is what I suggest you do. Ring up this parasite and ask him to please show cause why a virus, so-called virus, which is declared by the Australian Health Department to be 162 times less deadly than the seasonal flu, requires social isolation and mass surveillance and a complete destruction of the Australian economy, to the point that the cure the government is implementing is 6 or 7 or 10 times worse than the alleged pandemic that they're pushing. Can you please show me why you shouldn't be prosecuted for this stuff? That's what people need to be asking him. And I'd like to see hundreds and thousands of people ringing out politicians and asking them these questions. Can you show cause why we shouldn't prosecute you, or we shouldn't express a loss of confidence in your ability to govern? That's what people need to be asking, folks. I want to read a letter that was sent to me as well, folks. This was a letter that was sent by a listener. It says, Max, I've copied below an email that I received from my daughter's school. The way I read it, it would appear that the schools are now spying on families. Not sure how this would stack up in a court of law and how they receive their evidence. My daughter has only been back 3 days, but is already showing signs of anxiety, mainly through the new school routine of keeping pupils apart and not letting them play or interact together. This is torture, folks. This is absolute torture for these children. And this is the letter that they received from the school. Dear parents and carers, I stated clearly in my letter about arrangements for reopening that we reserve the right not to provide places for children if you are not following the government guidance and not mixing with others outside of your household beyond current regulations. I know regulations have been somewhat relaxed, but we have put a huge amount of effort into preparing a risk assessment, making the school building ready, keeping children from different bubbles apart, and continue daily to be extremely vigilant about hand hygiene and your children's safety from the possibility of catching or transmitting COVID-19, the non-existent virus, at school. We would hope you respect this and that you are not having other families around to play unless you can absolutely guarantee social distancing for all children and adults, and you all remain outside, not using toilets, etc., inside others' houses. My apologies, but I do not want the hard work of myself and my team to mean nothing, and we will refuse to admit children if we have evidence that you have not followed government guidelines. Thank you. Well, to the principal of that school, I'd like to just tell you that your hard work does mean nothing, because this entire pandemic is a scam, and what you are participating in is psychological abuse of children. And if this is what you are doing at your school, you're a disgusting individual who does not have the right or the intellect or the soul or morals or social capacity to be anywhere near children, if this is what you are pushing on them. This is psychological abuse of the population, definitely psychological abuse of children, and it is reckless endangerment of the public health. That's what these people are doing, folks. And there's been some really strange stuff happening as well. We've seen bizarre scenes in tiny Western Australian town as sovereign nation attempts to overthrow the government. This is crazy stuff, folks. So, there's all sorts of talk that's going around of, lawful rebellion and papers that have been served before the Privy Council and all sorts of things, which could actually mean something, legally speaking, if there is anything such as legality or law in this world that we're facing, which really doesn't seem like it when what you see in the United States. But you see right in the middle of it, you see things like this happening, which just, throw it all out the window, folks, and just make it seem like there's a bunch of crackpots out there, which of course is what these people are. Either this is a setup or these people are just terminally stupid, but it was a really almost expected thing to see, though, to see this sort of a thing happening. But, having said that, I fully expect there to be some sort of an event as well in Australia. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I want to put that out there now, actually. I think in Queensland, because the Queensland borders are not open yet, there's a big fuss about opening the Queensland borders. The state premier is making all this fuss about it, how it doesn't want to really open the borders because it thinks there may be some terrible pandemic coming through. And they're really making a national fuss about Queensland still being closed. So once it opens the borders, whatever its name is, the premier, I can't remember, it's Anastasia Pussy Slug or something. I don't really know what its name is. I can't pronounce it. But once it opens the borders, I would fully expect there to be some sort of an event here in Queensland, whether it is, a COVID outbreak, a cluster they claim happened or whatever. Even some crazy person who thinks that it's all a conspiracy and wants to blow up a building or shoot people or whatever, attack a government building, whatever. Or even just some sort of staged terror attack like they did in the Lint Cafe in Sydney, like they did with that car that drove around in circles in Melbourne. These were staged events. We've seen events in Sydney, we've seen events in Melbourne. We haven't seen an event in Brisbane yet. So Brisbane or the Gold Coast, it wouldn't surprise me if they staged something here between now and September, because things are kind of far too quiet and they need something to distract people, get their attention off this COVID rulings that are coming in place here. See, we don't have any race wars and race riots here. A lot of people are still looking at all of the COVID rules that are coming in place. So they need to do something to distract people from that. And there's so much stuff coming out about it, folks. Did you know that Bill Gates actually paid the World Health Organization $50 million? They actually said they didn't want to declare a pandemic, and Bill made a donation to them for unrelated reasons, of course. And then the very next day, they declared a world pandemic. Isn't that incredible, folks? And you know that for every $10 that the World Health Organization gets, $1 of that comes from Bill Gates. That's a fair bit of funding that he puts into that organization, folks. And yeah, it's just come out that he actually bribe them to declare a pandemic.
He has been given a huge platform to push what I view as anti-American policies based on coronavirus figures.
Yeah.
And this is something that he's not going to be held accountable to by voters.
Well, here's what the Gates Foundation has given to the World Health Organization and related organizations. Okay, 395 grants totaling $3.6 billion to the WHO. He pledged up to $100 million for the global response to COVID-19. He pledged $279 million to the Institute for Health Metrics and the Evaluation at the University of Washington. That's that IHME model that, of course, initially, wasn't all that accurate in predicting what was going on with this virus. It's more accurate now with all the new data. And he gave $13.5 million in grants to the CDC Foundation. People think the CDC is just a kind of an independent government agency, but they get money from the Gates Foundation. So it seems like Gates has his hand in pretty much everything pandemic-related, Cheryl.
Well, here's an interesting tie. So Bill Gates, for the longest of times, wanted to have the World Health Organization declare coronavirus a pandemic. And the World Health Organization did not want to do that. So a day after Bill Gates, through his foundation, announced an infusion of $50 million into something called the Therapeutic Accelerator to help fight coronavirus and find a vaccine, much of that money to go toward the World Health Organization. One day after that announcement, the World Health Organization Secretary General came out and declared coronavirus a pandemic.
Unbelievable.
It's also an interesting thing that a man called Sangrillo, who is well known for being the personal doctor of Italy's former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, said that a study has shown the virus was weakening and that in reality, from a clinical point of view, the virus no longer exists. And despite that, our government is locking down the country and imposing their social isolation rules. Can you see anything wrong with this picture, folks? And when you take that into account, again, folks, all of our governments are guilty of treason. And, things are not going to get any better until we realise what we're dealing with here. It would be nice to be just coming on and doing the old radio shows. I almost wanted to go back to that a week or two ago, just go back to doing weekly shows, doing a nice quote at the end, doing motion graphics and doing the stuff that I like to do. But with what's happening with the world today, I mean, there's no way I could be doing a radio show once a week, because even uploading these videos, by the time I upload a video, everybody else has released the same news anyway. I mean, it's virtually old news by the time you get things uploaded these days, because things are happening so quickly. And it's very difficult to sit and talk about spiritual understandings and a lot of the stuff that I talked about for so many years when we're in such a crisis. And it's so important that people pay attention to what's going on. I mean, really, we have to start pushing back, folks. We really have to start calling this out for what it is. Because while people are distracted with the riots, while people are distracted with race wars and with whatever they're going to do here, and even while people are distracted, researching history and all the things that I love to do, this is all rolling out. What I outlined for you there, that document that was sent out by Lismore Council about what they're doing in restaurants, this is going to be Australia-wide, folks. This is what they're going to do. The social isolation, this is coming in everywhere. We've got at certain shopping malls here on the Gold Coast this weekend, I believe, there are police there watching people to ensure that they are staying 1.5 metres apart from each other. It's crazy. There's probably places that are even ensuring that, you have to wear masks. And like I've said, folks, if you go into a place and they're demanding you wear a mask, say, well, no, I'm not wearing one because it's bad for my health. And if you're claiming it isn't bad for my health, if you're claiming I must wear one because it's good for my health, protects my health, or protects the health of others, I require you to give me proof of claim. And if you're saying you need to do so because of legislation, then I need to know the name of the politician, because I require him to provide me with proof of claim. And I need to also identify whether he's a doctor, because he can't be handing out medical advice if he's not a doctor. But no one can provide you with any proof of claim that these masks actually help your health, because in fact they hinder your health. they block your air passages, and they make sure you are breathing a viral load, a stale viral load all day, because all the stuff, the spit, everything comes out of your mouth. It's gathering in this mask and you're breathing through it all day. They're damaging your health, these masks. So, you know, this is what I mean as reckless endangerment of the public health. If someone has legislated in this country or in any country that you must wear a mask, then that person, if they're a politician, they cannot legislate the causation of harm. That is not part of their office. If they're doing that, they're an abuse of the office that they hold, and they are performing an act which is reckless endangerment of the public health, and they need to be removed and they need to be charged. It's as simple as that. You know, and you need to say no when people ask you to do this and explain it in this way. Just say to them, look, I require you to provide me with proof of claim, and I'm prepared to stand here, call the police, I don't care. I'll go to court over it if you want, but I require proof of your claim. Because I can tell you straight now, and I'll get 100 doctors to come in and testify for me. I'll get any doctor off the street, any garden variety doctor will tell you that these face masks damage your health. So, you know, we've got to ask these people for proof of claim and all the things that they're saying. Ask them for proof of claim that this social isolation is any good at all. Ask them why they're doing it for a virus which is killing nobody, like especially here in Australia, folks, 162 times less dangerous than the seasonal flu. Think about that for a minute. And they've shut down the economy, and they're making you stand 1.5 metres apart from each other, and they're tracking you everywhere you go. Think about it, folks. You know, we've got to start pushing back, folks. You know, there's no way we can just let this go and ignore it and think things are going to go back to normal if we just get all fuzzy and spiritual and start, you know, going down all these esoteric rabbit holes. Now, that's been half the problem for the last 10 years, is people going down all these esoteric rabbit holes. There's been people that have been ringing the warning bells for so long, but nobody's been listening. You know, people call it fear-mongering. Well, here it is, folks. It's all happening. You know, Trump declaring martial law. We'll see the privatization of the police force. I don't know how people still think Trump's on your side. I mean, you've got the military being rolled out around your country. It's in a place of chaos. I saw them ransacking or storming the White House the other night. I mean, how often do you see people storming the White House, folks? You can't get near the White House. Now you've got people running all over the steps and carrying on.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
It's pretty crazy times in the United States, folks. So, yeah. The only way we're going to get back to any semblance of normal, I think, is to call this for what it is and disconnect. But we can't be smashing things up the way they're doing in the United States. Antifa, all these groups. This is one of the things that is really going to bring down the United States. And I know so much of it is contrived, so much of it is paid for by Soros and whoever. But this is what's going to really do a lot of damage because of the destruction of the infrastructure. Even if you could get the food trucks back up and running now, and there was a big push to do that, suddenly it just all went crazy when George Floyd was killed, which is, of course, what it was supposed to do. Now, it's so easy for them to play these types of cards, and the people just get led and go along with it, and it turns to chaos. You know, and they're saying, oh, we don't need anarchy, we don't need riots. Well, we need anarchy, we just don't need riots. People just have the wrong idea of what anarchy is. Anarchy isn't chaos. But as I've often said, in the world that we have today, it's very difficult to move from a controlled society that we have to a society, an anarchistic, voluntarist society, because 90% of the population aren't educated enough to know about reality or even what they are. They're not intelligent or kind enough or educated enough to know how to govern themselves. And that's why we see the situation that we've got now unfolding in the United States. And I really do feel for a lot of the people in the United States, because you ain't seen nothing yet. And even here in Australia, if we don't push back, if we allow all this social isolation to become the norm, and we allow them to string it out until the end of 2021, well, it's never going to go away, folks. And what we have to do to identify this fact and identify the real problem is to realise that our governments are guilty of treason for doing this. This is terrorism, it's psychological terrorism, it's treason, psychological abuse of the population, reckless endangerment of the public health, it's treason. It's all based on a lie. The whole shutting down of the borders is illegal under our Constitution. The social isolation is illegal under our Constitution. Everything this government is doing is illegal under our Constitution. But they're going to keep doing it unless we push back. That's the thing, folks. So the question is, where are you going to draw the line? Look what they're doing to your children. Children are suffering anxiety simply from going to school. I mean, girls always go to the bathroom together. Even when you go to nightclubs, at school, whatever, you always have girls go to the bathroom in pairs. Now they're not allowed to. How's this going to affect the girls? How's this going to affect their minds? They've got to stay 1.5 meters apart in everything they do. No playing with your friends. And again, folks, it isn't social distancing, it's social isolation. And the result is extreme mental anguish for children. Apart from the mental anguish the adults feel, I just don't do it, and I won't do it, and I don't care what they say. And again, if they're telling me I need to, I require them to provide me with proof of their claim that it is doing anything to prevent any disease. Proof of that claim that this disease jumps 6 feet, the way they're saying, this virus. Proof of any of their claims. Proof of any claim that we need to do this because a virus that's 162 times less deadly than the seasonal flu. But like I said, folks, the interesting thing is that these guys are getting thrown out under the boot as well. That's what we're seeing in the United States. And I'd fully expect something similar to happen here as well, although they've been pretty recently militarised, our police. They were all given machine guns at the end of last year, folks. What do you think that was? It was for what's happening now. It certainly wasn't to protect you from terrorists. The terrorists here are the government. And we need mass non-compliance to this, but in order to get that, we need mass awareness of what's really going on. So do spread the word, folks, and do let your neighbours know what's going on, and ask questions everywhere you go. Every time someone makes a demand of you, ask questions. Ask them to provide you with proof of claim that these masks work or have any benefit at all. Ask them to provide you with proof of claim that we need any of this for a virus which is 162 times less deadly than the seasonal flu. And I know I keep repeating that, but I think it's a pretty important point. It's a pretty significant number. And if that doesn't drive the message home to the average Joe on the street, well, I don't know what will. But yeah, folks, we're at a really pivotal point in history here, so do pay attention. I'll bring you another more positive show soon. I really did enjoy doing that interview on the Ascend podcast the other day and just sort of talking about all the old stuff I used to talk about, the spiritual understandings. And, I love discussing those topics. But like I said, it's a very, very pivotal time we are at the moment. And I think it's important to keep focus on this. And thanks for all the information that people keep sending me. I will keep doing it and keep sending it in. Like I said, there's so much going on. It's, I lose even stuff that people do send in. I lose a lot of it in emails anyway because I've just got it pouring in so quickly now. But thank you for joining me for this little discussion. I'll bring you something a little bit more substantial and a little bit more constructed a little bit soon, and try to get back to some sort of a regular format. It's been a lot of stuff thrown me in the last few days. There's been a lot of stuff happen around here. And also Dave D's dying really threw me through a bit of a loop. We weren't that close, but we used to correspond quite a bit. And it was a great shock knowing that he died. I knew he was sick. He told me he was in hospital, but I really thought he was pulling through, and it was a very sad thing to see. And thank you for all the wonderful comments that people left on that little tribute that I did for Dave Dees. But that's about it for me today, folks. I'll bring you another report probably tomorrow or the next day. I'm speaking on the Michael Deacon show tomorrow as well, so you'll find a link on YouTube, I think. That's about, I don't know, it's at 10:30 a.m. Queensland time tomorrow, whatever that works out for wherever you are. But anyway, folks, I will speak to you again soon. Thank you for joining me for this little discussion. Please take very good care. Do spread information, and I'll speak to you again soon. Please take very good care until then. In Lakesh.